Every one of my records means something. The label, the producer, the year it was made.
Make sure you have the record player on at night.
Bad luck streak and dance in school, down on my knees in pain. Bad luck streak and dance in school.
Hello, I'm Collin from the Record Night podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. The following is a conversation that I recorded recently with Chris and Ryan, who are the hosts of a podcast called Record Night. Now, if you're a little confused, I suppose that's understandable, but we actually have separate podcasts, and it's kind of an interesting story. See, we didn't know each other. Chris and Ryan live out near Kansas City, while Jake, Joe, and myself are here in the greater Cleveland area. But we both started our podcast called Record Night, where we listen to records and then discuss them at approximately the same time. Now, there are some differences between our two shows, which I discussed with Chris and Ryan right in the beginning of the conversation, but as a listener of their podcast, and something I also discussed with them, is the fact that both Chris and Ryan play guitar. So I think that influences not only their taste in music, but also kind of their ear for it and how they analyze it. So definitely check their podcast out. They are on social media, facebook.com/recordnight, instagram.com/recordnightpod. You can also email them at recordnightpod@gmail.com. So in this conversation, we discuss all kinds of things. We discuss, they both collect vinyl. They each have over 200 albums in their collection. We talk about some of our favorite artists, some of the things we, I won't say least favorite artist, but just some things we dislike about certain music, other things we like about music, and much, much more. So, as I mentioned, both Chris and Ryan play guitar, and Ryan is actually in a band called Smell. You can check them out, smell.bandcamp.com. You can also check out a collaboration episode we did with them. Chris and Ryan actually reached out to us a while back. That's how we got together in the first place, and that's their episode number 20. We were guests on their show, and we discussed albums that we've bonded over. So check out that episode and all their episodes, but I think this conversation will provide some good context as to who they are, where they're coming from, and all that sort of fun stuff. So hope you enjoy. This is our conversation, or rather my conversation, with Chris and Ryan from Record Night. All right, so welcome to the Record Night podcast. I'm Collin, and I'm very happy to be joined by Chris and Ryan, who are the hosts of Record Night. So what do you guys do on Record Night?
Well, we kind of base ours around themes. So we draw a theme from a hat, and then we each bring in a record to show each other that we think matches the theme, and then we kind of break it down, talk about it, analyze it, hang out.
Yeah.
So we do. We've done a podcast together. Obviously, we were on your show.
Yep.
That was a good time, and so we do a
theme
similar.
For that one was records that brought us together. Bonded.
Yes. Yeah, and that was a good time. So we do a similar podcast with Jake, Joe, and myself primarily. Sometimes we add people. If like this week, I think we'll have Pat on, who's been on the show a few times. But so our podcasts have very similar beginnings as far as like obviously the name and the timelines and stuff. So talk about how the podcast came together. You guys, I understand, like just kind of similar to us, did Record Nights just for fun originally. So how did that all start?
So I met Ryan. Both our wives play roller derby, and of course, when they get together, it's just a bunch of husbands standing around. So me and Ryan started talking. Ryan, and we found out we had similar taste in music. He saw my Deaf Heaven shirt, so we started about Deaf Heaven, and we just decided, hey man, you just want to come over? We'll do Record Night. Basically, just hang out.
Hang out, bring beers. We would kind of each just trade off bringing beers and listening to records. And
then by this time, I've been doing another podcast for a while called Movies That Don't Suck and Some That Do, and that sort of started the same way. I was talking about movies, but I noticed that me and Ryan had a good rapport when we come talking about music. And I was like, well, I already fucking know how to do a podcast. Let's just do another one. And Ryan was all ears, and he had a little bit of experience doing podcasts too, right, dude? A little bit?
Yeah, just a little bit, hanging out with people. I do a yearly Game of the Year podcast with some Let's Playing friends of mine.
Yeah, so I just basically said, hey, let's do this. So first, when we started out, the first few episodes were just records that came out, and we figured we couldn't fucking keep up with everything that's coming out. So,
Yeah,
Ryan,
we were pretty fortunate early on in keeping with the new stuff because it was like a year where once a month a band either one of us liked we were releasing an album or even both of us liked. So I think it was like the first 6 episodes, which 12 albums came out that year that we were each like, oh hey, this is actually something I want to listen to.
and then
But we only like so many bands, and a lot of them aren't together anymore, so it was bound to run out.
Yeah, so at the first episode of the new year, back in the old 2020, we started doing themes where we pull a theme from a hat, but actually, it's just this paper bag I have next to me. It has
It was supposed to be like a stand-in hat, and it ended up just being a bag that we wrote hat on, and it stayed the bag.
And we hit with a bunch of topics, and I know we have at least 20 more episodes before we run out of topics, or we just do them again. But it's been working out. It's been really fun and challenging to find things that work for the certain thing we picked, but we end up doing it. And you can get cute with the ideas and topics and the themes, but we've had a pretty good run when it comes to it. I've had a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah,
So-
me too.
Nice. Do you still actively come up with themes, or?
Yeah, every now and then, if I come up with a theme, I'll message Ryan like, how does this sound? Like the most recent one I think I wrote was called The Gauntlet, which is just the most difficult, like challenging records in our collection, which will be a fun episode when we do that one.
Yeah, so maybe we'll check out that jazz record you guys listened to.
Oh yeah, I don't
Or
even
didn't
remember.
listen to.
Tripnotics, yeah. We're still thinking about. I believe it was a double LP, so I think it's still like a possibility to just do like the second record, the second disc of the double LP, but I don't know. So yeah, we'll circle back to the vinyl stuff, but you guys met a little later, so let's talk about how you guys got into music originally. So I'll start with Ryan. Where are you from, and kind of what were your beginnings with just music in general?
I'm from Colorado. Grew up, I mean, my dad really liked music, so a lot of what I listened to was kind of what he listened to, although he went through a country phase that I did not follow him through. But I mean, I started off like not really caring too much about music. Like I really liked it, but I didn't know how to explore it because I was a 10-year-old. So it's like, I like Backstreet Boys. I think the first CD I bought was the edited version of Blink-182's Take Off Your Pants and Jacket.
Nice.
Which, hey, is still a great album. I mean, I got really into Linkin Park at some point, and then I think right around high school, I was getting into Nirvana and System of a Down right around the same time, but I was in an art class with a friend of mine, Dane, and we got talking about like Tony Hawk, Pro Skater, and Primus came up, and I was like, he was like, I know that band, it's Primus, it's this band, and then seriously, that same night, the local radio station, Primus, was playing Red Rocks. They did we're going to show all their music videos and then interview them. And so I watched all their music videos, and it was just like eye-opening, mind-opening, brain-expanding. It was like I've never heard anything like this, like so consistently weird. So those little mailers that they would send out, it was like a catalog of like pick an album and send us money. And
like Columbia House is, I think, or Columbia something.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And they have a Primus album in there, so I bought it. First time I ever bought anything through the mail. And now kind of the rest is history. Now I'm just constantly looking for weird music, and the way I explored music after that was like, how is it related to Primus? So everything I listened to is related to Primus in some weird way. Kind of like, 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, but with
Sure.
Primus.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of how I got into my musical taste.
And how did that eventually transition? Like, do you remember when you first got into like actually collecting music on vinyl?
Yeah, I was kind of in my punk phase in high school, which I don't think it's really a phase. I still listen to it, and I still dress mostly the same. But I went to a local record store called Bart's, and this was back when like CDs were still big, and they had like records upstairs. So I was really into the band, the Dead Kennedys, but I walked upstairs just like, what's this record stuff about? Maybe I'll look through it, see if there's anything. And I found this record, In God We Trust Incorporated by the Dead Kennedys.
Nice.
And was like, oh, well, that'd be just kind of like a cool thing to have. So I bought it. I think it was like $8. Something like that. Just kind of like a little bit of like collector's things, I guess. Some sort of, I don't know, physical thing I could own from the Dead Kennedys. And then it just kind of spiraled out of control from there. I think I owned 5 records before I bought a record player. Just like, this is a cool thing.
Yeah.
And then I just got super into it.
Nice. Well, yeah. Well, then, Chris, if you want to kind of talk about for you as well.
Yeah, I come from Texas. Grew up in the first 5 years in Louisiana, but most of my 40 years from 5 till fucking 28, 29, I lived in Texas, and my parents weren't really big music people. I basically whatever was on the radio. But I remember my first CD that I got was Lance Morissette's "Jagged Little Pill" for Christmas when I was 10 years old. But I had a friend growing up, and he was really into Christian music, so I got into that for a little bit. For probably 3 years, I was really into big and like shit like the Newsboys, right? And then one of my favorite bands out of that was MXPX, which is I guess a Christian punk band. And of course, if I'm gonna follow my idols, I'm gonna look at the T-shirts they wear in their photos, and I got into NoFX. And NoFX are a punk
You're
band.
just really into bands that are
abbreviations. Yeah, abbreviations. So, but yeah, the ages of 13 on, and to this day, I credit NoFX with being the band that got me to punk rock, because that's at that time on, I went all into NoFX, and when it comes to the Christian music, I'm an atheist, so let's see how that stuck with me. But yeah, and I've been playing guitar since about 10 years old too, so I should be way better than I am. But punk rock was perfect for me because I'm not that skilled of a player, but it's easy as fuck and fun as fuck to play. So, yeah, like I would say that NoFX is one of those bands that opened me up to, basically. Oh, this isn't weird to say, but like underground and indie music, even that. Like, 'cause I listen to shit like Arcade Fire and I'm all into super obscure shit, because the stuff I listened to, even the Christian stuff, no one knew what it was. So it wasn't really that different going to other bands that no one knew who they were. But yeah, music is, since the age of probably about 10 on, I've been a huge fan of music, and I started collecting vinyl in about 2012. My first record I got on vinyl was Father John Misty's Fear Fun, which it came out earlier that year, and I was like, Ryan, I wanted something physical to own, something big, something that I could, basically sit down with and enjoy without having to squint at the lyrics. And since then I've collected, I've spent so much money on vinyl since then. So. Oh
yeah, Chris and I counted ours beforehand, and I came up at 285.
And I came with 272, but I have 2 on the way as it is right now. So.
Wow. Yeah, like I said right before the podcast, I have I think maybe 70 or 80 records. I need to count them. But yeah, I'm dragging behind. I talked to the last girl I talked to had 700 albums.
Jesus
on vinyl.
Christ!
I was like, what? Like, she said 700. And I'm like, on vinyl? Like maybe just in your digital collection or something. I don't know. But
yeah.
So 200 for both. That's not too crazy. So where do you keep 200 records? You both just have them on like shelves?
Yeah, actually, I
think
have
we
an
might
IKEA
even
shelf.
have the exact same shelf.
Yeah,
you
the
kind of see it there in the background. It's this like 9 cubbied thing from IKEA.
Yeah,
Okay.
They're
before
like perfect
that,
record size, and I bought one that I could like expand into, because I've really only filled the first 6 cubbies.
yeah, I think
I have room for 3 more.
I think I showed Ryan what I had, and he's like, I want that. Yeah, like
I was using like a night. Well, originally I was using like a nightstand when I had less than 50.
I had like 6 or 7 milk crates, and my cats would always get on top of them, and I had to scream at them. So I was like, I need something so my basement doesn't look like a complete fucking mess. And so I got that IKEA Calyx 9 cubby, and it's been great. But I still need to be better about stacking, because there's stacks of records also everywhere too. So I've been pulling them out.
Yeah.
Categorizing the stuff that I want to listen to more.
Do you guys do you have them like alphabetically as far as like how you organize them?
I've organized them alphabetically. I don't know if Ryan's gotten more in depth, but I just went straight alphabetical.
I go alphabetical by band, and then within the band I go in release order.
Yeah, same here.
Okay. Yep.
Which I think is a good way to do it. I organize my movies in a different way and my books in a different way. And I need to like standardize it.
I think it gets weird when you try to separate by genre.
Yes.
You know? So like.
But I used to work at Blockbuster, so I do that with my movies, which I have a similar amount of movies, physical movies, as I do records.
I actually used to have a lot of movies, but I got rid of them all because then you realize if I just kept on buying them, I would have room for nothing else. So
yeah.
So when it comes to buying movies, I'm pretty select. I mean, my favorite movie, The Witch, I don't even own it. I just enjoy it when I can come across it because I don't want to ruin it for myself.
Okay, so Chris, you mentioned you picked up a guitar when you were 10 and started playing. Ryan, you play guitar as well, is that correct?
I do, yeah.
Okay, when did that start?
I think I got a guitar for my birthday when I was like 13 and didn't learn how to tune it.
Okay.
But still kind of like strummed on it, broke a string. I still have that guitar, but I never really picked it up again until later. I became friends with, I mentioned Dane earlier in my art class. We became friends, talked about music, and eventually he was doing this like side band. He was in a punk band called the Hand Me Downs, and he was doing like this side thing with the lead singer of that band that was kind of just like weird stuff. Like they would just, whatever wasn't punk would go into this thing called Dr. Longmont, and it was like purely this like weird creative, like almost like a commune thing. It was very community based, where it was like, oh, we're hanging out right now, play something on this guitar and then we'll like write a song on the spot. And it was just kind of like just purely creative outlet thing. And I was hanging out with them so much because they're some of my best friends that I eventually kind of just like got absorbed into it, where there's like, hey, why don't we just like actually make this a band thing? So I learned how to actually play guitar. I had picked up bass because, you know, I listened to a lot of Primus. So that was kind of the main instrument. And then they were like, well, we're looking for like a guitar player. So I was like, cool, well, I'll do the bass thing, but on guitar, I guess.
Well, I forgot to mention.
Then, so I was in Dr. Longmont, and then we formed kind of a duo little thing as Smell.
Okay.
I actually have that.
So yeah, I'm kind of around here and there.
But nice. when I was in high school, actually, from 9th grade till like senior year, I was in a punk band that we named ourselves Tantrum, and we went like it was really fun just learning how. It was basically learning to play instruments while writing songs, sort of. So we learned how to be a band together, and so I mean, we went through so many stuff as punk to like alternative, and by the time we were a metalcore band. But that was an interesting experience because I have a couple CDs somewhere around here that has recordings of our material and then a recording of a live show, but I didn't hold on to that stuff for some reason. I'm regretting not having it. But you know, part of the reason I gravitated to punk and folk is because you didn't really need musical talent or ability, just that attitude, right? And but you know, I haven't stopped writing songs since I've been 13. You know, I'm always fucking around the guitar. So the podcast I've been doing, it's been a way to stay creative. It's getting that same sort of fulfillment I get when I write a song. It's all about creating, and so having that need to create has been a big help for me when it comes to just going through life as itself. So.
Yeah, you alluded to it a little bit there, but like how like playing guitar like influenced maybe what you gravitated toward or what you were listening to. So yeah, how did that influence? I mean, like, did you like play based on stuff you were listening to, or did that influence the music you got into after that? Yeah,
mostly it was me hearing stuff and wanting to play it. You know, like just wanting to be like, how the fuck do they do that? And I want to be able to do that too. But I wasn't. I was more interested in what I could do with it than what others were doing with it. Definitely like hearing bands like Tim Paul, even just hearing that and like, how the fuck do you do that with that? You know, how do you make that noise? And half the time when I have a guitar now, because I have acoustic and electric, and I'll just when I would put my electric in, I spend about half the time just trying to create this squall. You know, just the fucking most fucked up noises I can make on it. You know, but yeah, playing guitar definitely influenced the way I listen to it, because when you when it comes to writing, you know, people say the best way to become a good writer is to read, you know, and the best way to become a guitar player or a good guitar player is to listen to whatever you want to. So, so that was, it's influenced what I think it's influenced my taste, and it's also, I think it's given me ear for what I listen to in music. You know, like the sounds I hear. I think I don't want to say I'm better because I play guitar, but I think you hear things that other people maybe wouldn't notice or wouldn't appreciate as well if they didn't play an instrument.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I don't play guitar, but I have a couple guitars and like have messed around with them. So I'm even just like trying a little bit. It gives you an idea of how difficult it is, and then when you see somebody who's, you know, proficient with it, it gives you that appreciation for sure. Did you have a similar, Ryan?
I think there's stuff. I just keep looking over at my collection trying to figure out. I feel like there's music out there that's kind of like musicians' music, which I sounds kind of pretentious, I guess, but like on a recent episode of our record night, I brought an album by this band called Don Caballero, which like I know my non-musician friends have listened to, and they're just like, what is this? Because like you don't quite get that, hey, these drum patterns are really hard, or you know, them playing together and all this stuff is a hard thing to do.
Let me jump in real quick, because that's so funny you say that, because I've been going down a rabbit hole recently. Are they like considered math rock?
Yeah, they're kind of like, you'd even call them like the grandfathers of math rock. They hate being called math rock, but
okay. Yeah, I was going down the rabbit hole with a few guitar players that are characterized that way, and they're one of the bands that came up, so that's funny.
Did it happen to be this album?
No.
This one pops up on all the lists. Typically.
Yeah, when Ryan shows me, I'm like, what the fuck, dude? Like this is insane.
This one? Yeah, I love them. But yeah, I typically don't put it on around people, because it does kind of end up sounding like noise if you're not like really listening to it. Well,
yeah, I mean, I was the band. There's a guitar player, Yvette Young, and the band is Covet. And so I was listening to a little bit of them, and so I just wasn't really aware of the math rock genre or anything. So their Wikipedia page, I kind of discovered that. But yeah, I was listening to it and thinking about doing it for a record night, but it struck me in the same way that like it might go over like the jazz record. I don't think it would, but yeah, it is a different. It's, you know, musicians' music, I would say, at least more in that realm, you know?
Yeah, when Ryan showed me Don Cab 2 weeks ago, or like me a month ago.
It might have been like a month ago.
Yeah, it might have been. I was blown away by the way they write songs. Like Don Cab, like I was telling Ryan that they treat the drums like a lead instrument, and I thought that was really interesting. It's like a lot of people hate the idea of building a song around the beat or a rhythm. Building a song around that way, but I found it really cool that it was like the drums were like this, you know, the branches and the main tree, and the guitars were kind of like leaves of it. It was really cool, and I was really appreciative of Ryan showing that to me, because even after we did podcasts on Don Cab, and after that I've been listening to Don Cab probably pretty consistently, at least every other day, trying out the new stuff. So. Don Cab, they're definitely, I would say, definitely a musician because I don't think you'll ever hear them on the radio, not once. And so it's something you need to sit down and listen to, I feel like.
Yeah, for sure. So when you guys end up going down these, you have your own path, like where you get into these more obscure kinds of music, I guess. What do you guys think of like just regular pop music? Like, is there anything that like do you still listen to pop music at all, or like no?
That's a hard question because my wife listens to Top 40, right? So every now and then I'll be like, I like this stupid song, like Call Me Maybe was something I was really into for a little bit, but I'd never actually get a Carly Rae Jepsen record because like to me it was like silly, it was like whatever. But I used to look down people who listen to pop music, but I've gotten past that. Everyone has different tastes, but yeah,
I'm the same way. It never really comes across my table too often beyond what my fiance is listening to.
But if I, every now and then, something will break through. Like for example, Silver Sun pick up some of those bands that I was like, okay, they're on the radio, but I actually really like this. So about their stuff. Same with Granddaddy. Granddaddy had a song on the radio, fucking 10 years ago, and that's the only song that ever broke through on a modern rock radio. But I got their record, so it's every now and then, And then there's bands that I like that, for example, Arcade Fire. I listened to them fucking 15 years ago, but they didn't get on the radio until just recently, so they're no longer mine. I guess it's the best way to put it. You know what I mean? Like you're that band that's yours, and then everyone gets into it, and then no longer belongs to you, sort of personally, it belongs to everyone, which is not a problem, but it changes your relationship with the music, which is unfortunate, but I can't help it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I have no issue with pop music. I think generally around like once a year, one will come through that I really get into. Like thinking back, I really like "Kids" by MGMT. I really like "Somebody That I Used to Know." Like some of those like bigger songs are just like, oh, this is actually kind of cool.
Yeah,
they're far and few between, just because it's not really my taste. But I don't have a hate for it or anything.
Did the significant others try to do you like listen to music with them ever? Like, do they try to show you stuff they're into, or like not so much?
My wife isn't really it's hard to we have such a different way of listening to music. Like she'll listen to it because something's on, right? But I get excited about releases like that. Like there was a time in my life when my life was based around what's coming out this month, right? And when my favorite band would say new record coming out, that was a fucking holiday to me. And I'm sure the same for Ryan. But my wife, she doesn't listen to music that way. So when I hear someone say, "Oh, my favorite band is this," I'm like, "Oh yeah, their new record's coming out next month," and they're like, "I don't care." I'm like, "What the fuck is wrong with you? That should be super important to you because that's what's super important to me." Right? As someone who enjoys music and loves music and lives and breathes that sort of thing, along with movies and stuff. But yeah, so it only comes across my palate. My wife listens to, but like I said, she listens to music very, very differently than I do, but when she does have something she's interested in, I definitely want to make it happen for her. Like she's in this band called Dreamers, and we're gonna go see them before the pandemic happened. I was making sure that I wanted her to get as excited about music as I am. And I'd come to the conclusion that it won't happen that way, but it doesn't bother me that much.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. And we, as far as me and my fiance, we don't really like show each other too much because it's like I know she's not gonna appreciate this 20-minute long like jammed out song. But we'll let the other put stuff on in the background. Oh, band came out with a new video. I want to listen to that. And then, stuff like that. I'm
trying to imagine me and you sitting at our wives are listening to King Crimson. I'd be like, you guys are such dorks. I'm sure so we get when we get that.
But I mean, even then, like, I'll put stuff on in the car, quiet enough so we can talk and stuff like that. But there's always kind of like a base layer of listening to stuff.
Well, that's one of the things about, I guess, getting together and listening to records like, we do. Did you ever, was it ever like social like this, like where you got together with somebody to sit down and listen to music, or is this really, because that's the cool thing about doing the podcast for me is like actually sitting down and making music the center of attention as opposed to just being out in the background or whatever.
Well, that's what me and Ryan...
I've tried to. I've done... The like sitting down and listening to music part has always kind of been secondary to a lot of stuff. So it'd be like, oh, we're gonna get together and play board games. Why don't you put on an album? Or I did record night before I had even met Chris, having people over to hang out, but it was like only I was really into it.
Yeah.
So I even at that point was like, well, we should do themes. Like that would be fun. Like try to get my friends to just kind of think about music a little bit more. And it would always be like two people would bring something. The other people wouldn't bring anything, and then we'd always just kind of end up playing Mario Kart. Because they would get bored, and I don't want to like hold my friends hostage. And be like, no, listen to music.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
But
me
yeah,
and
doing
Brian.
it with
Yeah.
like
Go ahead.
listening to stuff with Chris has been more about just sitting down, like listening to music.
Yeah, because
Nice.
he mentioned record night, and he brought over a tote bag full of records, and that's definitely what we do. Is we sit down, we talk about the record, and it's been really cool to do the podcast. It's an excuse to, not an excuse, but it's a way to keep that happening. You know, like I have plenty of friends that, you know, growing up that we didn't like the same music, but me and Ryan, it's a way to be actively listening to music, and that's part of the reason I love vinyl is because you're forced to stay stationary while listening to it, and so I think you listen to it more as a person who is, you know, in a room with speakers and you're turning over the record, you're putting the second record on. I think vinyl makes it necessary to actually be there and listen to it, and I think it's a real important thing. You know, like you think about recorded medium, it's only been around for 150 years, right? So like you think about that, and it's weird to think of traditions when something's so short. But I feel like sitting down and listening to records, and actually being present while these things are hitting your ears, I think it's super important. So
Yeah, for sure. So as far as like actually collecting records and stuff, do you guys like? I'll start with Ryan. Like, do you have strong like preferences as far as like, you know, colored vinyl? Like are you super into it? Like from all those different angles, I guess.
No, I love colored vinyl if it happens to be a thing, but I kind of have a decently hard stance on like if it's more than $3 extra for the colored vinyl, I'm not buying it.
I like it.
I also I try not to go for like the expensive stuff or like really even like the collector's side of it. A lot of it is like I buy these so I can listen to them because I want to sit down and listen to them, but it's like I'm not going to listen to something that I paid $200 for because I'm like, no, it's precious now. I can't do anything with it. Like I have records that happen to be expensive because I happen to find them at a decent price and they've now become hard to find. But it's never about I need this thing because it's a rare thing to find. It's always this is going to be something I'm going to use. I'm going to listen to. I'm going to open it up. I'm going to listen to it. I'm going to take care of it, but I'm not gonna. They're not sitting here just to look pretty. They're here to be used and listened to. But yeah, I mean, I have cool colored vinyl, but it's never been the priority to get cool colors.
Yeah.
the same with me.
It's just a nice byproduct of buying from like indie stores or directly from the artist or something.
Sure.
It's the same with me. It's all about utility, right? I don't buy a record to stare at it and Google it if it has that quality. I'm sure, but I'm happy about it. But it's about utility. But the things I will pay a little bit more for are things that are 180 gram. Like if it's a heavy record, someone you beat someone to death with, that's always a plus for me because it's gonna sound better. You know, like I'm sure I've ordered a record by Antlers and I got it in the mail. It's like, what is this floppy shit, right? And then I go get 180 gram of This Will Destroy You. I'm like, this is what I'm talking about, you know? And so I don't mind paying a bit more for 180 gram, but because the colored vinyl, it's always cool, it's always neat, and then, you know, going to indie record stores or ordering straight off the artist's website is always cool to get, but it's not. I'm never like, well, fuck, it's not colored. I don't want it anymore. Because like Ryan, I bought this record to listen to it. I didn't buy it to just have.
Uh-oh.
So, yeah.
Chris, we lost you.
Did you lose me? 1 second.
Yeah, nothing.
He got too excited.
Oh, actually, you guys stay here. I'll be right back. 1 second.
Okay, yeah.
Are you guys hear me
Back.
now?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I don't know what happens. Sometimes my mixer just goes like, I don't know where we are. So but yeah, would you guys hear me off?
You aren't big on colored vinyl.
Okay, what I'm saying
180 gram.
Yeah, I like 180 gram. I'll pay extra for that. But when it comes to colored vinyl, it's just cool. I really, like I said, it's all about utility, and so utility is what I'm big on when it comes to records. I bought to listen to it, not to look at it.
Yeah, I will say I draw a hard line, and I won't pick up picture discs.
Oh, okay.
Because it's a like a printed up thing, kind of squished between two floppier things, and they wear out pretty quickly, and they don't sound very good.
Shit. Like they compared to extra
you're
records.
listening to very thin like gram records. So I'd rather just get a regular old black vinyl over getting something on a picture disc.
I think
Although
I
do
have
have a couple picture discs.
I think I have one picture
but those
disc.
are for looking at.
Yeah, I have picture disc for AJJ there, but other than that, like pictures to me are kind of like like Brian said, they're there to look cool, not necessarily be played. But they're
like I bought this picture disc and got it all signed by the band, but I also just own the regular version of the album as well. So this one's for listening. This one's for showing off because I got the whole band to sign it.
Yeah.
Now, what about repress, like for older records, I guess, like repressings versus the original copy? Is that a big deal for you guys?
So
I guess it depends on if the remix or remastered version sounds like shit.
So they're also a band. The records are hard to find. Like for example, I have a repress of My Buddy Valentine's "Loveless," and I remember after I got that, I was like, "Well, I love My Buddy Valentine," and this is a pretty cool repressing from 2000. I paid like quite a bit of money for it. Quite a bit of money for me for a record, $60, right? I got on eBay, and I was also looking at a blood red color version of it. But that's the time I realized I'm like, am I really paying this much for something I'm just going to listen to? And so one of the things I went to a record store in Dallas called Forever Young looking for Big Star's #1 record. Just a pressing of it. I didn't really care about how much it was, and they laughed me out of the fucking store, right? They're like, yeah, you're going to be able to find that for like $600. So a couple weeks later, I went to the record store, and they actually had a repressing of #1 record, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. I got this one. This one's $25. I have no issues paying $25 for this record. After I laughed out 2 weeks ago from these fuckers that thought I was trying to buy a $500 record, which I'm not. I'm not using $5 on rarity that I'm just having my wall and not listen to. That's the cool thing. Me and Ryan are all about listening to the music. We don't give a fuck how rare it is, So that's
like the one I can think of right now would be that I would choose not to get the repress version of it because of how bad the remastering is apparently in 2021 Dead Kennedys are going to reissue Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables with the new remix.
Fuck all that, man.
But they've been releasing singles with the new remix, and it sounds terrible. It sounds awful. Like they messed up the levels on something. They tried to boost things. Like I like where their head is at, but it like ruins the song.
I heard that Joe has nothing to do with those remasters, right?
Well, yeah, they sound awful. He hates them. He's heard them and he hates them.
Yeah.
But I think that would really be the only time I wouldn't listen to a reissue is if they remastered it for the worst.
But if it's the same as it was, like if they take the master tapes and they again just repress it, I'm all about buying records that I can't find if they're a reasonable price, So. So I have no issues when it comes to reissues. I get excited about them when I couldn't find them anywhere else for cheap.
Yeah. So this is one of the things that Jake, Joe, and I won't say argue about, but discuss is like obviously vinyl, was the listening medium for a long time before they had CDs and all that. But do you think it'll still be a thing like going forward?
I'm not sure. I mean, I heard this year that vinyl was outselling CDs for the first time, but again, it's just a different medium, way of doing things. So I'm not quite sure how that's gonna work. It's something I do like the idea of like again staying stationary, but a lot of bands are now just releasing stuff on digitally and cassette. Cassette's a big thing. So I don't know if how long vinyl will stay but I'm gonna keep on buying it as long as they keep on making it.
So I think we're kind of in like a new, a second wave of records, where it used to be the popular format. I think it is this year surpassed CDs in sales, so it's back on top unless we count digital stuff. I know they're trying again with like cassettes and stuff like that, but I feel like cassettes come off more as just kind of like a little novelty.
Also heard they don't sound as good as records, which makes sense to me.
They don't. Cassettes were invented as like, here's a portable version of my record. CDs were kind of like, here's a portable version of this stuff. But records just kind of have that thing. Like, they're big. They're something you can look at. They're kind of like a special edition of an album almost. So I guess unless digital or streaming does some big crazy moves that makes having this version of something completely obsolete and dumb, I don't see them going away, at least for a little while.
And that's not to say I'm not a paid product Spotify member. I definitely pay $10 a month to use Spotify.
Right.
But
it's convenient. But so the cassette or the 8-track or the CD, those were the convenient formats before, and that's why they started to take over. But now we've got digital, which is the top one, and then the records are for the people who want the physical versions. I can't think of anything else that would take back over as a physical.
And I also can't think that there are bands I listen to, and if I like them really, I'll check them out on Spotify, and if I really like them, I'll go out and buy their record. Like, that's not gonna. It's not something that I use as a replacement for records. To me, it's more about discovery, and so like having that, for example, I really like Phoebe Bridgers, and I discovered her through Spotify, and now when her new record came out, I ordered it straight as soon as it came out. I went to the record store and I ordered it. It's all about discovery for me, and a lot of bands, they will lament, when it comes to streaming, they get like, fractions of a cent. And that's why I want to pay for it, because I'm with these artists that I want them to continue making music. I'm going to go ahead and give them money. Like, I'm going to give them dollars as opposed to fractions of a cent.
Sure. Yeah. I guess when I talk about with, Joe and Jake, like, I just feel like there's sometimes like an unnecessary distinction made between streaming and vinyl. It's like, well, I pay for Spotify too. Streaming is great. It's you can listen to a lot of music that way, but then ultimately, if you like something and you want to support the artist, like you said, you could still. And then I'm still gonna go get the vinyl. So,
it's like a low risk discovery tool. Because what the options before streaming stuff were, you go buy a CD as a risk, like, I'm gonna go drop $20 on an album, or I'm gonna pirate it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Guess which one I did more.
Yeah. Me too.
And at that point, I would feel bad about it, because it's like I was listening to a lot of this music for free and the artist wasn't getting anything out of it. So with Spotify, there's a little bit of like, they're making fractions of a cent, but they're making infinitely more than they were if I was just taking the album, pirating it, and then I go and buy the records if I like it anyway, because if I'm downloading it, if I was downloading it for free and I didn't like it, I'd stop listening to it.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I try to at least buy everything that I like.
Yeah, and like, I have tons of stuff on my iPod that, because once I got everything on my iPod, at the point I was like, well, I have the CDs now, I give them away, right? And now I have like, a bunch of punk rock that I had bought, a long ass time ago, but obviously I have no physical copy of it anymore. And so it's kind of a hard way to look at things like I have a few records that I owned on CD and vinyl. I was like, what am I gonna do that? Like, I'm like I have the music already, but it's hard not to want to be completist when it comes to things that you own in a different medium already. So, but most records are brand new stuff that I have in no other way. So.
Yeah. So speaking of streaming and all that sort of stuff, how do you guys get into new music? Do you have like a routine of like trying to discover new stuff, or like how in the car? Like, how does it work for you guys?
good question.
Yeah, it's a hard question.
I guess I haven't thought about it for a while. Oftentimes it'll be, sometimes it's what Chris shows me. It's what my friends mention. I have other friends who will listen to music. They'll like send me an album every so often.
Yeah, 1%. Yeah.
A lot of what I do when I'm listening to stuff is I really like just like going onto the Wikipedia and reading about them.
Yeah.
Just, mushing my brain full of information. And a lot of, I'll find little links there and I'll click through that stuff. So it'll be like, oh, I heard about this band. Let me look them up. And then I try to find what album I should start with and then who they were inspired by. And
it's also when it comes when it comes to what label they're on, because a lot of labels focus on certain kinds of music. So, like, for example, if I hear bands on Southern Ward and I see, oh, they're on Southern Ward, let me check out these other bands on this label. Or Relapse, or Rough Trade, or Sargent House, even all these indie labels. They have such a small roster of bands that it's not hard to find something you think you might be into. Of course,
and most of those labels are musician run.
Yeah.
So like a band I'm really into now called OCs. The lead guy in that one owns Castleface Records, so he makes good music. And he hires the bands, so presumably he would like good music, so I listen to their stuff.
And
I listened to a band called Frankie and the Witch Fingers last week just to check it out, and they were pretty good.
And it's hard to also, there's some music journalism I visit, but I don't put a lot of stock in it. Like I'll visit Pitchfork, but half the shit they recommend it's best in music I'm not the biggest fan of. Like, for example, I think even the last 4 or 5 Kanye West records like a perfect score, and I'm like, I can't abide by that. But I have friends that send me stuff, and then of course, just scouring Wikipedia and various music journalism sites helps me discover new music. But I kind of have an idea of what I like, and I also like to step out of my comfort zone. And Ryan also helps me when it comes to things that I wouldn't normally check out. So
yeah, or I'll what I'll do along with the Wikipedia thing is I'll just kind of get like maybe a random like bug up my butt for like I'm learning how to speak Spanish, so part of what I'm doing is like what does punk rock sound like in Spain? What does progressive rock sound like in Argentina? So I'll just search like best Spanish speaking progressive rock bands and then listen to a bunch of stuff. And so that's been working out well for me. So, it's a lot of stuff like that. Like, what's the best current punk band from Spain? Yeah, but when it comes to streaming stuff, you have friends that recommend something, you really don't have an excuse to not listen to it. If you're a fan of Spotify, if you're a paid member of Spotify, we're really fortunate in an age where we can listen to fucking almost anything by using Spotify or YouTube, but we also have a responsibility, I feel like, as music fans and music lovers to give these bands our patronage when it comes to actual money in their pocket, and if you can't afford it, I understand it, but I feel like if you can't afford it, to give these artists these things that you love, making something that means something to you, a couple shekels here and there. So
Sure. Now on the podcast, you guys bring records and share them with each other, and talk about. So, like, on our podcast, we've talked about before when Jake brought the jazz record, it did not go over that well, and so, like, he's fine, but, like, it, that it stinks, like, when you really like something, it means a lot to you, and, like, it doesn't go over that well. So, talk about, like, maybe, like, how you guys approach that, like, hesitating to bring certain records, or like have there been records that you guys have listened to that like you just really were not feeling, and all that sort of stuff?
What's so interesting thing about this is that for whenever I bring something, I somehow have a really open mind and am able to appreciate most things that he brings. But we did do an episode recently of worst records by favorite bands, and that was interesting, but also kind of like, we brought these records we don't really like, but all we did is really talk shit on them, like the whole time.
Yeah. The episode was that one was an easy one because it was supposed to be an episode where we talk shit on something.
Yeah, but Ryan's been really good about bringing stuff he he thinks I'll appreciate in some way. And I'm sure there's stuff in his recollection that I would absolutely hate, right? But
That's
most,
for the Gauntlet episode.
yeah, that's where the Gauntlet episode's gonna come in. But as for when it comes to things that recently, I've generally found things to appreciate genuinely out of the stuff he's bringing. I'm sure it's the same way for him.
Yeah, I think having the themes makes it helpful because there's like something there that you can latch onto. Like I bet if I had brought Don Cab or something like that, like it's cool music. We're just gonna keep going back to them. But if like I brought that or like the Mr. Bungle album with just like zero context, a lot of it I think could come off as like, why are you showing this to me?
Yeah,
it's some dude like screeching into a microphone and nothing else. But I think having the theme is a little bit helpful. But when you're there also kind of like discussing it with each other, it's a little easier to be like, well, I connect with this part of it because this like, oh, I didn't think about that. But I don't know, we're usually pretty open and honest about stuff where it's like, man, I did not like this song.
Yeah. One of the things
why.
That's caused made the pandemic harder for us is that a lot of times, like, it's sort of like you're watching a movie or something like that. You'll become like a real cool part of it, and you'll look at the person you're with, they're like, oh, what did they think of it? But we can't. But since the pandemic, we've been doing it different, where we have to listen separately and reconvene afterwards. So, yeah, it's still. I'm glad we've still been able to do this thing that we've been doing when it comes to record night. But yeah, it was obviously a different dynamic when we were together listening to the record.
Because we would, you'd get a lot more kind of live, raw reactions, but it's still cool. I'm still discovering a lot of cool music and forcing my music on other people.
We've still been getting together for record nights, and it's funny. You don't want to do you don't want to overdo the like looking at the person to see other like. I feel like a lot of times if Jake brings a record, it's like I can feel him staring at me like, yeah, just let me listen to it, okay? Like,
right.
I'll let you know what I think.
I can't not do it because a lot of the stuff I mentioned, Mr. Bungle. I don't know if you've. Let me see if I can grab it real quick. One of these days, if you're in a weird mood, check this out. It's called Disco Volante by Mr. Bungle.
Okay.
It's probably, I think, the most challenging one I tried to bring for him, and it's like, what if you mushed jazz and Looney Tunes music and death metal and surf music and noise and just so much stuff into one album that it's just switching constantly with really dark, esoteric lyrics, but like it's still kind of fun.
Okay.
It's weird, but when I bring records like that, I live for that moment where I can watch him, like, there's a death metal guitar riff happening with a saxophone solo over it. Just seeing, I really like those moments of like, what are we listening to?
Yeah.
Hoping, and he ends up liking it and understanding it. So I missed the face-to-face for some of my weirder stuff.
Okay, yeah, for sure. Yeah, we've been in a pretty what about do you listen to Megadeth at all? You familiar with Megadeth?
I really love Rust in Peace.
Okay, we just listened to Rust in Peace.
I only love Rust in Peace.
We just listened to it, and it's funny because Joe and myself are not as big of metal fans, and it just went over so well. Like it was the best experience I've had with a metal record, like in my life so far. So
I love that one, and I almost picked it a couple of times. We did one about I think it was like underrated albums, and I brought Injustice for All by Metallica.
Okay. Yep.
And then like the next one we got matched perfectly to do Rust in Peace, and I'm like, I can't do thrash metal with Chris in a row.
Yeah,
but I had a hard time with it. Show up at some point.
I had a hard time with the Metallica one. Not that it was bad. It was just like it's like, okay, I've just heard where's Jason Newsted in this? I can't hear his bass at all in this.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's okay. So we listened to that one too, and that was like a thing, right? Where they turned him way down, like
they practically muted him.
Yeah.
I think the instruction in the studio from Lars, the drummer, was turn it down until you can like barely hear it, and then turn it down to notch.
I was thinking,
but I've listened to it. People have gone in and found the master tapes with the bass on it and turned it up and mixed the bass in there, and it sounds really good with bass.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Nice.
But it's also my favorite Metallica album.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a good album anyway, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I enjoyed it for sure, but the like the mythology behind it's definitely colored my view of actually sitting down and listening to a fucking Metallica record. Something I wouldn't have thought.
Yeah, that might have been the most contentious one, or the most divisive one, where we probably got the closest to you being like, Ryan, this sucks. Please stop.
And there are things I like about Metallica. Of course, the music, and I mean, of course, the guitars and the vocals are fine. But they have such a blowhardy image, and image isn't that important to me when it comes to bands. But when they're assholes, that makes a difference to me. And so, like, seeing things like Some Kind of Monster, their documentary where they have fucking Dave Mustaine and their band therapy, I was just like, really? Like, I'm gonna roll my eyes a bit.
Well, going back to like the pop music and listening to it with significant others or whatever, it's maybe, I don't know. Like for me, it's like my sister's into just like like just whatever's on the radio, So like every once in a while I'll sit down. I'm like, okay, and I really try to listen to it, similar to the way I would on record night or whatever. But it's I try to have an open mind and not have this automatic. This is pop. This is crap. Like you know what I mean? Like there could still be good music in there. But I guess where I'm going with this is I suppose it's different with every band. But like when you do get turned off by something, like is it like what are some examples of things that like turn you off about and make you not like an album or something like that?
I'm a big fan of raw. So if it sounds too polished or produced, that's something that turns me off on it. So, passion's a big important thing, but I understand there's music out there that it's not meant to be super overanalyzed, it's something that's just fun, but when it sounds like something's overpolished, that's something that turns me off on it.
Yeah, I think like I'm kind of in the same boat, but not in the like. I guess like adding too much to something with little effect. Like there are a lot of really good albums that I think are ruined by trying to put too much on there. There's I don't know if you're familiar with Nick Drake. He's kind of like a folk singer songwriter. He has one album called Brighter Later.
Yeah,
that it's like him. His stuff is usually just him kind of playing guitar and singing, but they added like string sections and all this stuff, and it makes it sound really cheesy. But there's good songs hiding in there.
Yeah, like for the record after that, Pink Moon, which I own, and it's probably one of my favorite. It's an amazing record. Pink Moon's amazing, and it's great because of how stripped down it is. Like when you try to add something to something that is amazing by itself, it's hard to improve upon. So Pink Moon, the record after that, and his last record, because he did all the things that musicians that we love did, and committed suicide. So Pink Moon's amazing, and it's the record after Brighter Later, and yeah, Ryan, I didn't really think about that. It's a good point.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of where I stand on it. Is I don't feel like pop music comes off to me as overproduced. A lot of it's well produced for what they're trying to do. But a lot of bands do kind of lean into too much of like making. It's hard to describe, but it's like they want all their stuff to sound perfect, but then it ends up sounding mechanical. Where like I wouldn't think that Tame Impala is overproduced, even though he's going bananas with his production, or My Bloody Valentine's overproduced, even though they spent like 12 years mastering and producing an album. But I listen to stuff. There's a metal subgenre called gent that it's people just like shredding on guitar and shredding on the drums, but it feels like the human element of it is taken out. So it sounds like music that's just been composed and played by a computer. But I mean, you watch the videos of the dudes playing it, and you're like, that's impressive, but it doesn't sound very good.
Yeah, it's like someone
sounds very mechanical.
Yeah, someone like for example, Yngwie Malmsteen's an amazing guitarist, but I can't stand any of his music. a lot of people were like for example, and this isn't to make me sound like an asshole, but when Dimebag Darrell died, I was like, okay, well, I hate Pantera. And they're like, I'm like, yeah, that's, and they're like, but he's a guitar god. I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't mean he makes good music. There are plenty of people out there that are amazing guitar that make god awful music, And I'm not saying, and I don't like Pantera at all. I like I said, I hate them, but that I can respect Dimebag Darrell for what he did for music and guitar playing, but that doesn't mean I'm gonna like him anymore. You know what I mean? So that's I guess.
I also don't think he wishes that Dimebag Darrell was dead.
You're
edging a little close to sounding.
I'm not glad he died. I'm just saying it didn't change how I feel about Pantera's music.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. Okay. One of the things I want to ask you guys when it comes to like more challenging music, I guess, so to speak. One of the things, like, if you're when I'm bringing a record for Jake and Joe to listen to, they're just gonna listen to it once on the spot right now, and like react to it. But a lot of albums, I find, I didn't really love it until I listened to it 5 to 7 times, or maybe even more.
Yeah.
So like, how does that? Do you guys have a lot of records like that like it took you a minute?
I have a lot of bands that are like that.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Like I didn't really like, one of my favorite bands is Mastodon. I didn't like them very much, really, like the first year I listened to them. But there were bits here and there where it's like, I really like this. That would kind of latch me in, and then like I eventually got it.
I was the same way. Like I really liked Aqua Dementia only for a long time, and then like Converge is one of those bands. Like I showed Ryan recently, Converge's Jane Doe. And I didn't like that record the first time I heard it. Like the first 7 times I heard it, I didn't like it. But now it's easily in my top 20 records of all time. Is Converge's Jane Doe. So it's hard to. I when I bring records, I generally want to try to bring stuff that I think is immediately likable. But I don't think about it that much because like a lot of bands, a lot of records to me are growers. I have to listen to it 5 or 6 times to really appreciate it. So it's a bit hard when it comes to reacting once to something,
Mm-hmm. And I think a big part of me not liking something off the bat is, I guess, the expectations that were put on something. So, like, I didn't really like the band King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard when I first heard them because they were sold to me as, like, a stoner rock band. Mm-hmm. But then I listened to it and I'm like, well, this doesn't sound like Caius. This doesn't sound like Sleep. Like, and I think that was what it was with Mastodon as well, is like, hey, it's metal. And I listened to it, and I'm like, well, this doesn't sound like Megadeth. I don't like this. So I think a lot of it's just kind of subjectively on me. I did the same thing with like the OCs or Tame Impala. I didn't like Tame Impala because people were like, oh, you like King Gizzard, you'll like Tame Impala. And it's like, it's not the same music. You're just saying that because they're from Australia. Or say like the OCs. The OC's a little closer to King Gizzard, but it's like, they're different, but I like this band for this reason that this band isn't doing. And I don't think Chris would have those same expectations. So I try not to think about it too much because he probably doesn't have those expectations built up because he's like, I don't know what this is.
Yeah.
Well, in those 2 cases, like Mastodon, like albums that like you said it took you like a year, right? Like what kept you listening to it? Did you just keep running into it, or like, like what kept you trying it, I guess?
Part of it was my friends used to make like mix CDs, and we'd drive around in their car, and Mastodon songs would show up. But there was always something like in one of the songs that it was like, that part sounds cool, but I don't like. I think for me it was like I didn't really like the harsh vocals on it. Mm-hmm. It was like because it was a lot more yelly, a lot more your stereotypical kind of like death metal-y kind of stuff early on. And I didn't like that. And I eventually, I guess, developed a taste for it, and it was like, oh, actually, this is really cool.
Yeah. Same with me when it comes to bands that I don't initially like, but they make their way in there by something I hear in a song, and it just stays in my brain somehow. But me and Ryan, we've talked about our love of ugly sounds. Like if something sounds ugly, we're all about it. We want to figure out why it's on this record. And the harsh vocals, like Yeah, even vocals like harsh vocals like death metal vocals, or even when it comes to Fugazi, the vocals aren't the best right off, but we find things to appreciate about them. So I know there are a lot of people out there that don't like metal because of the harsh vocals, but I'm at a point where now I can actually listen to harsh vocals and tell, sometimes what band they're from or what they associate with just by the way they sound. So, yeah. So
I think there's also that like little nugget of there's something here. Like this thing is acclaimed, and I want to know why. I want to know what's good about this, so I give it a couple more shots. I know one band I made fun of a lot when before I got into them was this band Sun.
yeah,
Which we've listened to them on the podcast before. They're a drone metal band. It's two dudes with the biggest stack of amplifiers you've ever seen. It's two guitars, and they just play these long sustained notes that are way down to it. It's like, blah, and then a lot of people make fun of them that it's like, it sounds like my refrigerator buzzing.
and we and me and Ryan were
It's
able
not
to,
true. It's a funny, funny to joke about it.
but me and Ryan were able to come with a 30-minute discussion about Sun when he brought his Sun record, and yeah, and that's something that I think that a lot of people, like people who listen to Top 40, will not appreciate in any way whatsoever. In the same way that we don't appreciate what they're listening to in the same way. Again, different tastes, right? Like I'm not gonna shit on someone for like.
I think with them early on, I was looking at it in almost kind of a dismissive way, like I just described it. Like it's two dudes, just they're not playing, they're holding a note. Like where's the challenge? Where's this? And then I sat down and listened to an album, and it was like it was almost it was like meditative. Like it like puts you in like a trance listening to it. So you're kind of just like lost in these like waves of sound, and it's a really interesting experience. But it wasn't something that I was originally listening to music for. It's like I want to see some guy play a cool guitar riff, and it's like, nope, I'm gonna hold the note for a while.
The best way I guess to describe it is to look at portrait paintings from the 1700s or even Van Gogh, and then going and seeing a Jackson Pollock painting. There's still art, but they're so different. You know what I mean? Like. So
it's like when someone's like, art was the best during the Renaissance because look how realistic it is, look how photorealistic it is, and then I'm like, but Cubism's cool.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, this Dada stuff is awesome.
You're judging it based on something that it's not trying to do. I thought this was metal. Where's the dope ass solos? And it's like, that's not what this is about.
Yeah.
Right.
They're not there.
So.
Now, as far as like records you guys listen to, I know you've mentioned like King Crimson. Now, what did you listen to? Was that In the Court of the Crimson King?
Yeah, that's what he showed me. But I went back and listened to. After I listened to that, he showed me one called Stars, a song.
No, Red.
Red, yeah. So I went and listened to Red, and I was like, yeah, well, this is fucking awesome. I love King. I really love that Red record, but. Yeah, he showed me the Court of the Crimson King, and then is that Red right behind? I'll get you going, but
nice.
But he showed me I was aware of King Crimson. I had an idea what they sounded like, but when he showed it to me, it was really interesting because we ended up not liking. There's one thing we don't like about the record, and we came to the same conclusion of what we don't like about it. But I like the record for the most part. But for this, what song is it that we hate?
Moonchild.
Yeah, Moonchild fucking sucks. But the rest of that record's awesome, and I really am grateful to Ryan for getting me past that sort of like all these douche nozzles who were like King Crimson are the best, and I'm like I couldn't get an honest opinion from someone that I respected except Ryan, and so I was really appreciative of him bringing that and kind of forcing me to listen to it.
Yeah, so it was a question earlier, and I forgot to mention this one where you said something that might turn us off to a band. Fans.
Oh yeah.
Like, it's not so much like, oh, all these people are listening to a band I like, I don't like them anymore. It loops back into like the Sun thing and all that. It's fans will set these crazy expectations for this band and then talk about how amazing they are. I'll just go ahead and say I don't like Tool.
Yeah.
I think their fans have built them up so much as this amazing thing that there's all these bands that came before them and have come after them that do what people say they do, but better. And I don't know, Tool is just kind of boring to me, and it's like, oh, they do this cool stuff with the Fibonacci sequence, but like it's a really cool idea. But then you listen to the song and it's just like it's kind of boring. Like you're not really it doesn't come off as very interesting to me. Like I think the most interesting thing they've done is have a Wikipedia page. I'd rather read their Wikipedia page than listen to.
And also, there's that documentary about Maynard, where it's basically him about making wine. And I found that documentary fascinating, more fascinating than any Tool record I've listened to. But that's not saying the Tool. I'm not saying the Tool are awful. It's just that they're something that not my thing, right? Like, for example, I like a band called ISIS. ISIS are a post-rock band, and they toured with Tool back fucking 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And people would come to me like, oh, you must like Tool. I'm like, nope, I like ISIS. You know? So it's like, it's a bit different that way.
It's similar to, like, King Crimson toured with Tool, and Tool fans, like, practically booed them off the stage. And it's like, guys, come on. It's like, not only aren't you recognizing that these people influence them, but now you're just being assholes to them.
Right. Well, so that King Crimson record is from like 1967 or something like that, I believe.
I think so. Let me check. Copyright date on it.
Yeah.
Doesn't have a copyright date on it.
You have to pull out the vinyl.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
For the sake of conversation, it came out in 67. 69.
Oh, okay. So late 60s. So, is it mostly? Do you guys listen to mostly like newer stuff, or has it been a lot of older records?
So I listen to mostly newer stuff in the past 30 years, I guess. But the oldest I've gone recently is Bob Dylan's early stuff. You know, like I'm a huge Dylan fan, a big one. You know, like you talk about people who are Dylanologists. I'm in there at some point. I've read so many books on them. But when it comes to going back, anything pre-Dylan, I'm pretty ignorant to that stuff. Like, of course, I've heard Leadbelly and Robert Johnson and that old blues stuff, which I own a few records by that. And I think I have a Skip Johnson record somewhere in my collection, but I don't go any older than 1955. But most of the stuff that I listen to now is stuff that came out in the past 20 years.
Mm-hmm. I'm all over the place. I don't really have an era that I gravitate to. I grew up on classical music. I've got, you know, the Fantasia soundtrack in here. I've got a Debussy album, you know, some Tchaikovsky. But on Spotify, I'm currently listening to an album that came out on Friday. So there's not really a moment or an era I have pinned on it. Just kind of the mood I'm in. Although I do gravitate towards rock music. So probably anything late 60s and beyond is what I listen to mostly.
I do have some Vivaldi, and I have some Bach in my collection as well, because you know, Bernstein, like anything he's conducted, I've been pretty if I find it, I buy it, you know. So it's but like, you know, like I know Ryan's all over the place, but I stick in stuff that's basically new, you know.
Yeah. So a lot of the records I ended up having, just based on my interest, were like older, like 70s rock records, like pretty mainstream stuff. And so I when we first started doing getting together to listen to records, I would have a lot of those. But then Jake was into newer stuff, and he would bring, they were all double LPs. And I found that you know, like older music was limited by vinyl, right? They weren't going to do a double LP, you know what I mean? Whereas like Jake is bringing a repress. It was originally released on a CD. They weren't constrained by that, so it ends up being super long, and now it's a double LP. Do you have a preference between shorter and longer albums?
For the show?
I think it depends with the artist. You know, like it depends. Like, for example, if I'm hearing a record come album, a band I love is coming out with a double LP, fuck yeah, I'm all about, like, you know, 120 minutes of music. but again, if it's a band that is known for their long, drony jams, I'm gonna be, you know, I'm gonna be lukewarm about it. But I don't really have a preference when it comes to length, but I want it to be cohesive if it's long. I want it to be. I want them to have a vision. I don't want them to say, "Here's a sample of all the songs we have, and here I threw it together." Sequencing is a big thing for me. Sequencing is important, and so if a band puts together a record, if they have to change it for vinyl, I want the sequencing to still make sense. You know?
Yeah, for sure.
Right. Yeah, I think in my own personal listening, I don't have much of a preference. I can be all over the place, but with the show, I do, with our podcast, I try to keep it at least somewhat short. I have a couple albums that are like, they weren't even constrained by CDs. It's like, hey, we're in the digital era. This thing is an hour or 2 hours and 10 minutes long. And especially when we were doing it in person, we would meet up after Chris got off work. So I don't want to be the asshole that's like, okay, here's my thing that's 2 hours long. We have to record an hour-long podcast and squeeze yours in. I hope you didn't want to sleep tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now that it's separate, for the time being, I might swing back to it. But I don't know. I feel like I don't try to censor myself too much with what I'm bringing to the show. But if it's something that is 2 hours long, I don't want to run the risk of, Chris listening to it and being like, this sucks. And I'm like, cool, strap in. It's 2 hours long.
One of the interesting episodes we did was actually records under 30 minutes just recently. And, I mean, I think they both ended up being punk records. Is that right?
No, mine wasn't punk.
Okay, mine was a like emo punk sort of thing, but they were both under 30 minutes. I think Ryan was just under 30 minutes. I think mine was actually...
Mine was like 29 minutes and 59 seconds.
I think mine was like literally like 18 minutes, and it was considered a full length. So, yeah, that's... But when it comes to sort of topics, that's where we're like, we go all over the place. Where you can be cute or not be cute. Where records under 30 minutes, there's really no different way to interpret that.
I see. Yeah. I guess that's one of the things I've enjoyed about, like, I guess you kind of mentioned it, Chris, with the sequencing, like the art of the album, if you will, so like, I think a lot of like older, like a few Jackson Browne records I feel like he even wrote, here's side A and now here's side B. Like there's an end to side A, there's an end to side B. I guess I enjoy that. I think it's difficult. It's at least more difficult to do, I think, with a longer album. People have certainly done it, but I guess that's kind of...
The thing is, like, you listen to bands now, or even artists nowadays, they'll listen to, like, their bands or artists have released just singles, and that's all they do. And to me, that's kind of cheating. I want the meal. I don't want the dessert. I want the whole thing. I want the appetizer, the main course, and the dessert. Don't just feed me a piece of candy. That's how I feel about records. If someone releases an album, that's way more interesting to me than a single they released. Yeah. Like, I don't give a fuck about Wet Ass Pussy. I don't care about WAP. but it's what's in the culture. So it does kind of make me worried that the art of the album is not it's not as important as it used to be.
Yeah, but it's been that way for a while, I think, with radio and music videos and all that stuff, just single songs coming out with a music video and stuff showing up on the radio, like kind of events now. So I think there's a market for both of them. I don't fault them for releasing single songs, but that's just how it is. We get both, though.
Yeah.
I don't think albums are going to go away because someone who used to make albums wants to capture, the singles. I think that's a huge risk for a lot of bands, because, you got to have the video. It's probably equally as expensive to make a single with a video and make it a big monumentous occasion as it would be just to make an album.
It's probably fair.
Yeah. A couple more things I want to ask you guys, and then I'll let you guys go. But when it comes, like, hold on, I had something specific I was going to ask you. When it comes to Don Cab, or a band like that, do you think? Well, let me go back to Tool for a second. So like, do you think because you had heard, because when I wasn't really familiar with Tool, and we listened to I don't know, whatever album they had that came out in Lateralus, like 2001. It made a big impression on me, but I wasn't like. Do you think it's because you heard other stuff, like because you're more familiar with like maybe bands using weird time signatures and stuff that was less interesting to you?
I think so. I think Tool has an interesting place, and it's gonna come across as me kind of sounding like a snobby asshole, but it's like Baby's first cool band is it means a lot to a lot of people because it's everyone's first weird band. It's kind of similar to like how I feel about Primus. Like I could talk all day about all the cool shit Primus does, but not everybody gets it. And I'm sure I'm crazy annoying about it because they're not the first person to do all that stuff. And if you hear Tool kind of in isolation or in a vacuum, they're the biggest one. They're the most accessible one that are doing all these things. And it's probably a lot of people's first experience with like, you get the crazy time signatures, you get people kind of really taking music more seriously and being artistic about it. They do cool stuff, no releasing lyrics or anything. It's people's first exposure to like Bill Hicks and that way of thinking and all that stuff. And I think that probably meant a lot to a lot of people, but I kind of knew it all already.
Yeah, I think when it comes to bands, because Tool are a huge band. They're mainstream. People know who Tool are, and that doesn't mean they're not good at all. I'm not saying that, but like Ryan was saying, Baby's first cool band. Like a lot of people will hear Tool is that they've done something different, and they're the first mainstream band that brought this sort of idea to the light. And I'm not saying they're not good at all, but I'm saying that Tool for me were that same way. Like when by the time I heard Tool, I'm like, they sound kind of like this, or they sound kind of like that, and again, it's hard to separate fans from some bands. And I had plenty of friends in high school, or people I hated in high school, that were wearing that Tool shirt. You know what I mean? And so it was kind of like that. And Tool, they meant a lot to a lot of people, but to me, they're one of those bands that were made it lucky, got lucky, and got out there for everyone to hear.
Yeah. I think just knowing about Tool and wanting to like check them out kind of came too late into my musical exploration or my philosophical exploration, stuff like that, for it to have really any sort of impact on me in a significant way.
Yeah. I always ask people this, and it's difficult to get a straight answer because it's just hard to choose. Do you guys have like a favorite artist or band?
100%.
Yeah.
Okay. So you do.
I know when you start to explore music and a lot, like you like different things about different stuff. I mean, my band that I'm enjoying the most at a certain time changes a lot, but I put a lot of stock into how much something influenced me, or how I think, or started listening to music. And I think the most influential for me, and one that I still think holds up, would be Primus. As my favorite band. I still enjoy them the most. But like the current band I'm really digging will change constantly, but I wouldn't count them as a favorite band because they have to come after Primus.
I'm the same with Ryan, but I have like top three that match to me. It's Fugazi, NoFX, and Bob Dylan. Like they're all in Harvey Danger. Those top five shift daily, but they're always consistently at least in my top 3 or 4 bands. But yeah, like what I'm listening to this week, I don't think I've listened to any of those bands this week. I think I've been listening to New Phoebe Red.
Yeah, it's been a while since I listened to Primus, but I got, their first album came out for Record Store Day, and it was one of the 2 I was missing.
Yeah, so
now I have to go out and buy my least favorite one. So,
but
then I'll have the discography.
Yeah, when you asked me about my favorite band, I'm like, well, there's always a consistent top 5, and they may change like by how I'm feeling that day, but they're always consistently in my top 5. Those bands I mentioned, which are Fugazi, Harvey Danger.
Do you think you have a
NoFX.
favorite band?
I like Warren Zevon. He's like a singer-songwriter. Where Was London is like his famous song.
Sure.
Right.
So yeah, I guess it's him. I'm into more folky stuff, and yeah, like it's funny because like he's probably my favorite, but he's not. I wouldn't say he's the most talented guy I've ever heard or anything. It's part of it is just like I've liked him for a long time, and you know what I mean. You just kind of connect with it in a way that maybe you don't with some other stuff.
Yeah, it's connections definitely. Like when you're, like when you, I doubt I'll hear a band nowadays that will affect you as much as the other bands I mentioned did the first time I heard them. But I mean, there's still stuff I'm really digging. You know, it's not closely related to what my favorite stuff is. So, it's an interesting dichotomy when it comes to favorite bands, and it's different for everyone, I guess. But like there's some bands I'm like somewhere out there, someone's favorite band is Red Hot Chili Peppers, and I don't understand it, but it's there.
It's called the State of California. Got him.
Like somewhere out there, someone's favorite band is Nickelback, and I just don't get it. But that's their favorite band. What am I gonna say about that?
Yeah, I think. You're right. I think you've got a higher chance with the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Yeah. But yeah, there's certainly, I'm sure, some Nickelback people out there. What about favorite albums? Would it just be one of them from like those bands you like, or is there just like any albums that just like this piece of music just stands out for me regardless of who it's by?
Well,
I think it can be like that, but because like one of my favorite albums of all time would be Rust in Peace. I don't like Megadeth outside of that.
Oh, okay.
So I think that one kind of has a weird one on there, but like, I mean, my favorite album just happens to be a Primus album.
Okay.
Yeah, same with me. But actually, there's not a whole lot of that. Like, I put a lot of stock in the albums. So if a band has a great album, for example, I'm gonna say King James Version by Harvey Danger is a record that you cannot find on vinyl. And kind of hard to find on CD. You can find it on Spotify, but it's probably my favorite record. But I'm sure I showed it to Ryan, and he found things to appreciate about it, but it just meant a lot to me at the time as I heard it. So it means probably a million times more what it means to me than what it meant to Ryan. But yeah,
it's still a good album though.
Oh, it's a great record, and but I put a lot of stock in albums. So bands that I love generally have records that I love, not necessarily just the band itself. So it's and right now my favorite record of the year is by this artist named Phoebe Bridgers, Punisher. But I don't think I'd put her in my top 50 favorite artists of all time.
Okay. Yeah, I could talk to you guys forever, so I think we can wrap it up. Talk about the podcast for a minute. Like, how is that going for you guys? You can plug it. What do you have like any new themes or anything new you're doing with the podcast, or just kind of what's coming up for you guys?
Yeah, well, we actually recorded one yesterday on the theme of politics, which was not on purpose with being close to the election or
it was
anything
just something
like that.
I put out of the hat.
It's what the hat decided, but it happened to work out, and that was pretty fun.
Yeah, it was a longer one than we usually do.
If you don't want to get into politics, maybe don't listen to that one, which I realize is a bad plug, but we have 23 other episodes, so feel free to check those out. But it's going well since we've switched into quarantine mode.
We
if you're unfamiliar, we are Record Night. Very, very similar name to what you guys have.
Yeah.
But we have a collaboration episode with Record Night Podcast. So Record Night meets Record Night, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we had a good time doing that.
Yeah, but we're on Spotify, we're on Instagram.
Oh, do you want to give our social media
plugs?
Yeah,
I need to find the social media page in my notebook.
I
forget it all the time.
We're on Facebook.com/Record Night.
Instagram at recordnightpod, and you can just send us a regular old email at recordnightpod@gmail.com. We welcome new themes. We don't want to have to think of all of them. Like, we have a ton, but would love to do some guest themes or listener suggested themes. The hat will eventually run dry, so we would love to hear what other people would like to talk about.
Yeah, and we're found everywhere on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Podbay. Anywhere that you find podcasts, you're likely to find Record Night. So
nice. Yeah, I've listened to like you talking about like getting a listener like suggestions on themes and stuff. I guess I can only think of like years or like a constraint like that. Like,
Oh, yeah.
do you have any like has that been
Yeah,
a theme for you guys?
That would be a theme. What do you got? Hit us with the year. We'll
Yeah,
put it in the
I'll write
hat.
it down.
Well, what's interesting to me, like with my, it's funny to like go through your record collection, just kind of see, I don't know, like what weird things manifest themselves. I have a lot of records from 1978.
Yeah.
So like 1978 is like a good year for me. So that's what made me think of like.
We did one with best record year you were born, right? And
Oh, okay, yeah, there you go.
And so I that record I picked that year. I was born in 1986, so fucking License Still by Beastie Boys was on when I picked. And,
Nice.
I forgot
It
Ryan. What
might
you?
happen to be a Primus album. Who'd have thought? But yeah, do you want to put that in our hat?
Yeah,
That's
I just wrote it down.
official
Yeah, I wrote it down.
Record Night podcast suggestion.
Yep.
All right, man. I want to thank you guys so much for taking a little bit of time to talk to me. It was definitely a good time.
We had a definitely good
Yeah,
time
thanks
too.
for having us.
Yeah, for sure.
Good to see you again.
Yeah, and I guess we'll be in touch down the road. I'd like to maybe get together and do like a mutual record night with you guys again.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So I
awesome.
look forward to doing that at some point.
All right, man. Well, we'll see you soon.
Okay, talk to you guys.
How about that Record Night podcast?